The United States Supreme Court is set to review arguments for and against California's U.S. House district maps, which voters approved under Proposition 50. This week, the Republican Party filed an emergency application asking the nation's highest court to block those maps. It comes after a panel of federal judges sided with the state, upholding those newly drawn maps. Republicans argue the new maps violate the Voting Rights Act by favoring Latino and Hispanic voters over others. Joining us now is longtime lobbyist and adjunct McGeorge School of Law professor Chris McHaley to break this down for us. Chris, thank you so much for your time.
Good morning.
So with the highest court essentially asking for a response from California leaders by this upcoming Thursday, does that signal the court wants to weigh in here?
No, I think Justice Kagan's order for the state to respond by this Thursday, the 29th, is to ensure that both sides are heard.
So once the state responds and the Supreme Court has what the two sides have to say initially, what happens next?
Well, they'll make a decision. The California Republican Party and the U.S. Department of Justice have asked for a decision by February 6th because, of course, legislators have to decide, or candidates have to decide, what races they want to enter.
With the Supreme Court already allowing Texas to uphold its gerrymandered maps, essentially, I mean, would you expect the same to happen here for California's?
Well, if they were intellectually consistent, yes. Justice Alito's decision specifically cited, subsequently adopted by California, so they referenced specifically California, and he said that the Texas maps were drawn purely for a partisan advantage, pure and simple was the exact language that he used. So if you accept that approach, the same should apply in California.
All right, Chris McHaley, we always appreciate your insight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, I spoke with Republican Assemblyman David Tanguipa hours before the Supreme Court asked for the state to respond. Tanguipa is one of the Republicans who filed this original lawsuit against Proposition 50. The Supreme Court is considering this case because a lower federal court in Los Angeles rejected those claims that Tanguipa and others raised in a 2-to-1 decision. Here's part of our conversation. I mean, how confident are you that the highest court will block those maps?
Again, the entire argument is whether race was used as a predominant factor in the Prop 50 maps. And I believe it's very clear. We have seen, whether it was on your show or on podcasts, the map maker and the intent of the map maker had racial implications on it. I mean, again, when somebody states that the first thing they did when making these maps was create a Latino majority district, we should expect that to happen. So we're hopeful that the Supreme Court can see that. There's a lot of case law that shows that the intent of the map maker is extremely important to weigh into this. And I just hope that the Supreme Court sees it. So we're expecting, at least hopeful, that by Monday, February 9th, that the Supreme Court is able to weigh in and apply that emergency injunction.
The Supreme Court has upheld Texas's gerrymandered maps, and also, I mean, they were accused of racially gerrymandering those. What makes California's situation any different than that?
Specifically, the language that was used. When the Supreme Court was listening to Texas's new maps, when the Supreme Court was listening to Texas's new maps, they understood that the entire legislative body, that's the map maker in Texas. The legislators are the map makers. Our map maker was Paul Mitchell. Paul Mitchell admitted to being the map maker, and Paul Mitchell admitted that his first thing was a racial gerrymander. That's the fundamental difference. The legislators in Texas did not say we were racially gerrymandering the state of California. The map maker in California did say that it was race that played a predominant factor in his creation. That is the fundamental difference between Texas and the California lawsuit.
Just to be clear, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee paid Paul Mitchell to draw these maps. And at least on our program, in response to a question about breaking up communities of interest, he said, quote, "This plan in total improves Asian voting power, and I expect something similar to come out from Latino groups that are looking at analyzing this to determine how it's affecting Latino voting power, particularly in the Central Valley, to positively impact those communities. Redistricting will always have cities getting split." So he's not there directly saying we're helping Asians over others or Latinos over everyone else. Your response to that.
Well, this is one of the areas why I wish Paul Mitchell would have testified in court when he was asked to testify in court. And even in the dissent, it actually talks about how he claimed legislative privilege, which he's not a legislator. That doesn't.
But is he following orders from the people who paid him? I mean, should it be incumbent upon Democrats in Congress and Democrats in the legislature to maybe do more explaining for him?
Well, here's the part that would have been the great question we could have asked him from that comment. When you say that you expect Latino groups to see the same thing in the Central Valley, why? Why? As the map maker, you expect Latino improvements? That means the intention he did was to improve Latinos in the Central Valley. Because if he could answer, your expectation was that Latinos were going to see a positive outlook in the Central Valley? Can you explain why you did that? Well, that means that he probably chose Latino areas and Latino specific communities to put them in California Assembly District 13, which is what we talked about in our lawsuit. And if it's his expectation that they're going to see a positive outlook, that means it was his intention to use race to draw that map. And that's exactly his open admission on that. We again wish he could have came to court and testified on that. And even the dissenting judge says that this feels like a bad actor when they refuse to testify in court on their intentions of the creation of the map.
I also talked with the Assemblyman about what the Republican Party will do moving forward, depending on the court's actions, plus his new position on the state's powerful budget committee, the action he hopes to take as the state grapples with big money problems. You can watch our full conversation on calpolitics360.com.